Jenny Ray, the Managing Director of Management Consulted, and I'm here today to talk about the wording of your consulting resume. So before we talked about the overall formatting of the paper, then we talked about the structure or the anatomy of the resume. Now I'm going to get down into the nitty-gritty of wording. Obviously, I can't share everything that I know in just a couple of minutes today, so I'm just going to share the high level and some of the key insights that we've gained from editing hundreds and hundreds of excellent resumes every year. The first thing that it's important to understand when you're getting started is that you need to know what level of detail you're going to go into for each of the entries on your resume. So by now you've known how to lay out your page, you also know what you're going to put on there. Now the question is, what do you talk about for each one of the entries? And I have a couple of key guidelines. The first is that you should use no more than 5 high-level bullets to talk about the resume. So you can't have a list of 20 things that you've done in one specific entry. In addition, you can use a second level of bullet, but you cannot go beyond that. So you can have 3 and 4 levels of bullets, just 2 total levels. In the second level, you can explain some of what you've done in the top level. So for example, if you have multiple transactions and you want to lay down the difference between your transactions, you can use the second level of bullets to explain those. So in each entry, 3 to 5 total bullets, 5 at a maximum. Underneath that, you can have 1 level of sub-bullet, and you can have usually 2 to 3 under each one of the sub-bullet areas. In total, you don't want any one of your entries to take up more than 1/4 of a page. If it's longer than that, it's going to really bore the reader. They're going to think there's so many words there and so much contained, I will read it later. What that really means is that they'll never get to it and they'll just go ahead and skip over it. So just make sure that as you're going through the process, keeping in mind that you want to be brief with each of the experiences and highlight more experiences as opposed to just a huge amount of information about one. That brings me to the next point, which is double entries. Sometimes there are those of you who will have attended a university for multiple degrees, or you'll have stayed at the same company for a long period of time. Either you received a promotion, you got a return offer, maybe you moved positions inside the company. And it's really helpful to group all of those together, because when you're talking through your resume in the actual interview or through the networking process, you're going to generally do that. You're going to talk through the experience that you had in pretty good detail, but just for that one area, and then you're going to want to move on to a different area. So make sure that in that case, you just have one heading, which is the name of the organization and the location where you worked. If you had multiple locations, you can just put slashes between them. And then underneath, to start each one of the entries, you'll have the position that you held or the degree that you received, as well as the times that you were there, or in the case of your educational experience, your graduation date. So it's helpful to understand how many bullets you can put and also double entries. Now the question comes, what do you say when you actually get down to the words? And this is something that we dedicate hours and hours to for a number of our clients, but the method that we recommend here is called the CAR method. The CAR method is the simplest way that we could come up with to think about breaking down your structure. And it's just 3 parts: context, action, and results, which stand for CAR. So context, a lot of times those of you maybe working for organizations that are very large, you'll assume that someone knows what the company does as a whole, but we don't know the context of the team or the division that you're working on, or we don't know the context of the project that you're working on. So we do need some context about what you're doing. For those of you that work for smaller organizations like entrepreneurial groups, a lot of times we have no idea what the company actually does. So your actions are always in context to the other things that are going on behind the scenes. We want to know what those things are in order to kind of explain what it is. So at the beginning, you'll always want to include, for this type of company, or for this type of project, or for this type of team. Anytime you can include numbers, that's going to be helpful. In addition, the second part are the actions that you took. And in our consulting resume and cover letter Bible, we have a tremendous list of all of the action words that we recommend, as well as a number that are highly recommended for consulting in particular. The key focus here is that you want variety. You don't really want to include the same action words on every line. In fact, within one core entry, you want to try to not include the same action word twice at all. So it's really important as you're going through the process to make sure you're using a variety of words. Again, the goal is to demonstrate that you have a variety of interests and a variety of areas of expertise. So that's why you want to use variety in this area. Action Action words are important, but they do not have to start every line. Sometimes having a little bit of context at the beginning of lines can make it more engaging as you go through the reading of the entire resume. And then finally, the final thing are results. Now, results are often misconstrued, and a lot of people say, I don't have results. I don't know, for example, if this project was ever implemented, and then if it was implemented, how successful it was, and if it was successful, if that was ever measured, and then what the measurement was. Don't worry about that. Use whatever metrics you have to convey success in your roles. So if it was projected, if the project that you did was projected to win a certain amount of cost savings for the business, just include the projection in there. If you, for example, were able to complete the project and you worked again with your team or you received a return offer, that can be a result. Results come in many forms. Some of the most common ones are outcomes, awards, or projections, like I said before. So it doesn't necessarily only have to be the quantification of the actual achievement. It can also be just the way that you measured it. So it's important to include those three things in the CAR method: the context, the action, and the results. One of the critical things that's important to know here is that because you're using the CAR method in your resume, you're actually preparing yourself for the interview. You're going to use the CAR method when you start talking about your stories later in the interview, and we'll make sure to bring that up in future videos. In the meantime, if you've got questions, we love to work on resumes and answer hairy resume questions. So feel free to send them to us through our website, and you can also just get access to a ton of the resources that we have available for resumes directly on the website at managementconsulted.com.